What I'll be doing in this video is installing most of these parts from Lowbrow Customs for my 1980 Sportster Ironhead. So let's get to it. First off, I'm going to be removing the stock speedometer and tachometer on my Sportster, as they are far too big and bulky to be on a chopper style motorcycle, and the speedo that I bought from Lowbrow Customs is much smaller. So to get rid of the movement and flex out of these bars, I've got to replace these rubber bushings in the triple trees. Alrighty, so these are the aluminium bushes which I bought from Lowbrow Customs. Install two from underneath as well. So that's how easy it is to install the steel bushes, and as you can see, there is no flex in them bars. Now I'm going to install the new speedo. So this simple little mechanical speedo from Lowbrow Customs is just going to mount via this little clamp here. There we go. I bought two sets of these bullet style indicators, and I'm going to change out the lenses for orange ones, as here in Australia our indicator lenses need to be orange. Alrighty, now let's mount these up on the bike. So I bought these cheap fork mount indicator clamps for 15 bucks off an Australian website called Third Gear. Just locks in around the fork like so, and it's secured with a nut and bolt. As you can see, I've taken my headlight out as I need to replace my indicator relay, as this one's toast. I'm going to turn these clamps around that way, and that will look a hell of a lot tidier. Now with the stock indicators, they just mounted there, and I'm not going to be able to run these indicators in those stock mounts just there, as this thread isn't long enough to go through the fender strut cover, the fender strut, then the fender. So I'm going to mount these right at the end of my fender. One thing I've never liked with any model Harley Davidson is the massive big cowbell horn hanging off the side of the bike. So what I'm going to do to tidy this up is just relocate my horn. I've made a bracket that will mount on the front of my bike, and I've got a smaller aftermarket horn. I've got to give myself enough length for the wiring to reach the front of the frame. So this is the much smaller horn I'm replacing the stock one with, and as you can see with the stock horn, it's only got one positive terminal coming off it. So the way this works is the actual horn itself grounds to the frame, whereas with this one you need a ground wire and a positive wire. So what I'm going to have to do is just make a little wire that grounds to the frame. I just want to cover that red plastic sheathing, as it's going to be visible when you look at the front of the bike. So just going to put some black string tape over it. And this terminal here is going to be the terminal that grounds to the frame. Alright, now that's my ground terminal. Now I just need to crimp one of these terminals onto that positive wire. Now let's install the horn. So I made this little bracket here which is going to mount to the frame behind the front forks, and the horn's just going to mount to that small hole there that I've drilled. Install a small washer, then a nylock nut. Yep, it's certainly loud enough. Now what I'm going to do is just rebuild the carburetor, but before I do that I'm just going to sit that Springer seat on the bike to see how it looks. So as you can see, I've already installed the mounting bracket that secures the front of the seat to the frame, and I've already whacked the springs on the seat. So that is a quick look at what the Springer seat will look like on my Sportster, but now I'm going to take the carburetor off and rebuild it. I'm going to take my air cleaner off, as when I installed it I didn't have a gasket. I have gone with a genuine Bendix carb rebuild kit which I bought from an eBay seller. Alrighty, so that's the surface there that I've got to put some gasket sealant on. So it's always a good idea to have a manual when you're tearing into something you've never pulled apart before. So my Sportster Ironhead is a 1980 model, and previous owner has installed this Bendix carb, and that is from a 1972 to early 1976 Sportster 1000. First thing I'll be doing is taking off the float bowl. And as you can see, the lever on my accelerator pump is absolutely shot to pieces. And it looks like the head of that bolt on my accelerator pump shaft is razzed. So I think I'm going to have some trouble trying to get that loose. Now let's open up the new kit. Take the pin out, securing the float. Now you've just got to make note of how that little spring sits inside your float, and that gasket looks like it's in pretty good nick. It's just this accelerator pump diaphragm that looks absolutely razzed and worn out, and that is how it's supposed to look. So I'm just going to replace this nylon washer for the one in the kit, which fits much nicer on the main fuel jet. So that's the seal to the main jet, and I don't know if the camera picks it up, but it is a fair bit bigger. So it's going to seal a lot better. So how I'm going to install this accelerator pump: grip it between my two fingers, pull the spring down and manipulate it into place like so. And I'm sure there's going to be people out there saying, why don't you use all those seals? You've got the carby disassembled anyway. But I think that bolt there is going to be quite a headache getting out, and none of this was leaking prior to disassembling the carb. But I'm sure I'm going to eat my words in the future, so watch this space. So I will be replacing the idle mixture needle, but I'm just going to wind the stock one all the way in and then count how many turns out it was, as this setting was pretty bang on. The bike was starting pretty easily and running not too bad. That's one turn. That's 1.5 turns. So wind it all the way in till it's seated. Don't tighten it too much, as you'll damage the tip of the idle needle. That's 1 turn, and that's 1/2 turn. I'm going to be replacing the gasket for a new one. This tang is bent down way too much. Now to replace the float valve, hook it onto the float. Now for the float pin. So how to set the float height on these Bendix carbs is you want a 3/16 drill bit, and you want the carburetor obviously sitting upside down, and when you place the drill bit in there you want the float to just rest on it. And as you can see, that float level is way too high, so I've got to bend that tang up. I've got to say that that is pretty bang on. So now to install the float bowl onto the bottom of the carburetor. I've just soaked the leather in petrol for about 5 minutes, so let's see if the float bowl goes on a little easier. And that is much easier. I'm just going to mount my main jet, and you don't want to over tighten these, as you will crack your float bowl. That's the carb rebuilt. Now let's whack it on the bike. Another thing that I had to purchase was this accelerator cable stay. as the previous owner had the accelerator cable zip tied to the mounts on the intake manifold. So this little chrome piece here cost me 40 bucks, as they're quite difficult to find on the internet. Just going to apply some Loctite to the thread. Now for the new gasket. Alright guys, that's all I've got time for in this video, otherwise it's going to drag on way too long. But in the next one I'm going to mount my air cleaner. I'm going to get a petcock for my fuel tank, as I don't have one. I'll also get a bayonet fuel cap, and I'll probably be mounting the Springer seat in the next video. But that's going to do it for this one. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!